Do you believe there is a demi-monde, Mr. Chandler? A half-world between what we know and what we fear. A place in the shadows, rarely seen but deeply felt. Do you believe that?
Yes.
That's where we were last night. Where some unfortunate souls are cursed to live always. If you believe in curses, that is.
Welcome to the universe. My name is Mac, and today we'll be talking about one of my favorite TV shows of all time, Penny Dreadful. Penny Dreadful is the story of several 19th century horror characters brought together into one focused narrative. If this sounds familiar, that's because it's the same basic idea behind The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, the comic by Alan Moore and Kevin O'Neill, and the very loosely adapted 2003 film of the same name. I've tried a few different methods of going into this video because this is the first thing like this that I've ever done. So rather than following episode by episode, I'm going to be going over the whole general story. Because in its soul, Penny Dreadful is a mystery story. There is a big mystery hinging on the entire story. And it will be a lot easier to just go into the entire mystery because the smaller elements are revealed very slowly. And I want to just kind of get past that and just wrap it up so it's a lot easier. Penny Dreadful ran on Showtime from 2014 to 2016. It only had 27 episodes across 3 seasons, but I think it worked for that. I'm glad it didn't go on too long and was ruined like so many other shows are these days. And I actually have evidence of that because they made comic books that take place after the show ended. And hold on, I have them here somewhere. They made these after the show ended, taking place after the show, kind of like Buffy the Vampire Slayer did and Charmed. But these are not very good. The stories would be cool if like they were movies, but it doesn't have the same spirit of the show Penny Dreadful. And several of these wonderful characters are just very out of character in these. The way that I'll be going about this, because these characters and stories are so familiar to so many people, is I'll be relating these stories as I go along the story of the show to these characters' original stories and the different adaptations that this show took things from. Without further ado, let's get into it. This is Penny Dreadful. And by the way, this video is pretty much nothing but spoilers, so if you really want to watch this show, and I heavily recommend it, it is currently available on Paramount Plus and Prime Video, at least at the time of the making of this video. If you do want to watch it, please go do. It's amazing. Just be prepared for a lot of gore and a lot of sex. Our story begins in 1891 London. Not with any of these people, but with an attack on a mother and her child. But we don't see what does the attack, only that it is very grisly. We see this the next day when inspectors are investigating the very grisly, bloody scene. People suspect Jack the Ripper is back, but we don't know who it is. This is just one small part of the huge mystery that's at the center of the show. We cut to the Wild West show of sharpshooter Ethan Chandler, who is from America. And he is smooth talking. He is a very handsome man. I don't know if you can tell from that, but he's a very handsome man, and he also has a very smooth voice. Well, this man, Ethan Chandler, is approached by this woman, Vanessa Ives, after his show, and she asks him for some help with quote-unquote night work, which is also the title of the first episode. They go to see this man, Malcolm Murray, in an opium den, and he takes them to a bunch of creatures, vampires, and they have to fight them, although they don't know what they're called yet. They just call them creatures. And they end up killing one of them, and they take this vampire to this man. This man pulls back this exoskeleton skin that this vampire has. His body underneath is like black and etched with hieroglyphics. So they take pictures of those hieroglyphics to this man. This is Mr. Lyle, Ferdinand Lyle. He is an Egyptologist. Egyptology, the study of Egypt, of course, was a very big thing in these times, and this is represented through the character of Mr. Lyle. He is also one of the best characters. He is a comic relief character. Oftentimes, he seems very gay, but he has a wife, which comes as a surprise to many people, it seems. But he is very flamboyant, and he has a French accent, and he's funny. He's the best. So Vanessa Ives and Sir Malcolm Murray, they bring pictures to Ferdinand Lyle of the hieroglyphs, and he tells them that they're from the Egyptian Book of the Dead, but they'll have to come to a party at his house because he always engages in social gatherings before dealing with any sort of business to know what kind of people he's working with, which is valid. Basically, Ethan is a little bit afraid of what's going on. Vanessa tells him about the Demi-Monde, which is the world between what is known and what is feared. It is rarely seen but often felt. That is what Vanessa tells him. And she is a sort of fortune teller. She knows what's going on. She's very perceptive of people and everything else. And she reads his fortune. She tells him to pick a card. He picks it. It's the Lovers. Vanessa tells Ethan that they have continued use of his skills, and at first he doesn't want to come back, but he eventually does. And then at the very end, we see this man in his lab, and he's working on a dead man, this man, and the lights come off, and there's like sparks, and then he finds that this man is alive. He brought him to life because this is Victor Frankenstein. Okay, so now that we have all the initial setup out of the way, let's get into some of the comparisons. This show, first and foremost, is very reminiscent of The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, except the focus isn't on action. The focus is mainly on building these wonderful characters. If you have not read or seen The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, Penny Dreadful is a little closer to the movie than it would be to the comic. Malcolm Murray is an African explorer. He is good with guns. And Alan Quatermain, in his original books by H. Rider Haggard, I think it is accompanied by an African man named Hans. Malcolm is not accompanied by Hans, but he is accompanied by an African man named Sembene, who we're not exactly ever told what their exact relationship is, what happened between them. But Sembene works for Malcolm at his house, Grandage Place. But he's not like a servant per se. He becomes friends with pretty much everyone, although he gets the least to do. We know the least about his history. And then we have Vanessa Ives. Vanessa Ives is, well, we'll get more into that as I get into more of the story. So by episode 2, we meet a few more characters. We meet Brona Croft, who is staying at the Mariners Inn where Ethan is staying. She works as a prostitute, and she has consumption, which is now known as tuberculosis. She is dying of consumption. But she is a very kind person. She is lighthearted. She loves to laugh. But you can tell that there's a sadness inside of her, and that's reflected in her name, Brona, which means sadness in Gaelic. Through Brona, we meet Dorian Gray. And if you recognize that name, he was also in the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen movie, as well as having his own novel back in Victorian times called The Picture of Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde, wherein Dorian Gray's soul basically was transported into a painting, and every bad or ugly thing that he does not reflect on him, it reflects on the painting instead. It takes a very long time for Penny Dreadful to actually show us the painting. So people who are unfamiliar with this character but watched this show probably had no idea what was going on unless they looked him up until season 2 when they revealed the painting finally. We then have Victor and the man that he brought back to life, who chooses his own name out of a book, learning how to read and eat and basically relearning what everything is. He chooses the name Proteus, and Victor teaches him about the world, taking him out where they briefly see Brona Croft and Ethan out. Vanessa and Malcolm attend the dinner party of Mr. Lyle, and Dorian Gray is also there because Dorian Gray is just that great. He just gets invited to everything. So they go to his dinner party where there is a seance taking place. And the lady that leads the seance, her name is Madame Kali. This is her. She will become very important later. She is not that important right now, which is why I'm not putting her on the wall until she is relevant. So Madame Kali leads a seance, just for funsies. Well, as hinted at in the first episode, when a cross turned upside down when Vanessa was praying to it, but we didn't really get much more than that. We just know that there's something going on with Vanessa. She's possessed or something. So Madame Kali leads the seance, and Vanessa becomes possessed with the son of Malcolm Murray, who is this man, Peter. Vanessa becomes briefly possessed by Peter. We learn that Peter died tragically in Africa from dysentery. And this is a very chilling scene, but Eva Green, who plays Vanessa, gives an amazing performance. And then instead of being possessed by Peter, she starts talking about death and basically just starts saying a bunch of scary stuff, like demonic stuff. So now we know that she's definitely possessed. And she cracks the entire surface of the glass table, and then she just throws these doors open, runs out into the rain, and goes and fucks some random dude. True story. Oh, and also at the beginning of the night, Vanessa and Dorian had like a big connection because he doesn't have a soul and her soul is claimed by another, so they have a sort of similar soul situation going on. Following the seance, Mr. Lyle is like, I love Vanessa, but what the fuck was that, Malcolm? What the hell is that? And Malcolm basically just says that she is troubled. And then Mr. Lyle explains what he found in the hieroglyphs. He found that Amunet and Amun-Ra, which are two figures that should never be together in Egyptian mythology, because if they ever came together, then it would spell the end of the world, basically. The world would be plunged into darkness, and the hidden ones will emerge and rule. The vampires are known to be the hidden ones, but there are also other hidden ones, technically, that we will eventually get to, but this is what I think of as the actual hidden ones, not just the regular vampires and different creatures. Mr. Lyle believes that Vanessa is being hunted by Amun-Ra. By the end of the second episode, we have the whole mystery set up. Vanessa is being hunted by Amun-Ra. We don't know who that is yet or exactly what that means, but I'm about to explain it because the journey to get there takes quite a while to get there. And this is where I'm just going to go and just start breaking everything down now that we have the mystery established. But before I go into the full mystery, I'm going to go into the very end of this second episode, wherein Victor Frankenstein and Proteus return to Victor's apartment, and Proteus says how nice it was to meet their new friends, Brona Croft and Ethan Chandler, and then a fucking fist pops through Proteus's chest from behind, and he's completely torn apart. And this man stands behind him, telling Victor Frankenstein that his firstborn has returned. Next, I'll be going straight into the full prophecy, and I will also go into the comparisons with other adaptations. While most of Penny Dreadful is built around the one basic mystery, Frankenstein, the first creature, and Dorian Gray don't actually have that much to do with the main mystery, so I will also go over their stories as I go over the mystery. To go over the mystery properly, I'm going to have to add some more people. Here we go, getting into the whole mystery, the whole prophecy. We have a bunch of new people added, as you can see. Mr. Lyle, the Egyptologist, finds out that through a bunch of different artifacts written in different languages, there is a spell or a history or a prophecy, it's kind of all three in one, that is written across all these different ancient relics in different languages. And this is part of the Verbis Diablo, which is the language of the devil, which is what was thought to be spoken in the Garden of Eden before any of the other languages. In this prophecy, it tells that Amunet and Amun-Ra will join, the world will be plunged into darkness, people won't be able to breathe the air, and the hidden ones will emerge and rule. But there are also other parts of this. The history tells that God cast two brothers, one of them being Amun-Ra and the other one being Lucifer, out of heaven. Lucifer. And here we have who Amun-Ra will become. Surprise. It won't come as much of a surprise, I don't think, because of the subject matter that we are already dealing with. Lucifer and Amun-Ra were cast out of heaven by God, one of them to hell, the other one to live on the mortal plane forever, and that was Amun-Ra. These two brothers became engaged in a constant battle for the soul of Vanessa Ives, who is actually the reincarnation of Amunet, who is known as the Mother of Evil. And if either of these two claims Amunet, either her soul or her body, then this prophecy will be fulfilled. When Vanessa Ives was a child, she was best friends with Mina Murray, who we know as a character from the novel Dracula. And when they were young, they were absolutely best friends, and she was also very good friends with Mina's brother Peter, who, as we know, will eventually go to Africa with Malcolm and die there. Everybody thought that Vanessa and Peter should be together, but Vanessa and Mina were always very good friends, always together, always laughing, always talking, the best of friends. Vanessa was always a little different, but nothing was particularly strange about her, until the day when she went into their hedge maze and found Sir Malcolm Murray hooking up with her mom, Claire Ives. And Malcolm was married to the mother of Peter and Mina, Gladys, right here. But he was hooking up with Vanessa's mom, Claire Ives. After Vanessa saw this, it really messed with her head. She knew it was wrong, but she was also turned on by it at the same time. And this is what awakened the spirit of Amunet in her. And then we skip ahead, and Mina is engaged to this man, Branson. The night before their wedding, Vanessa has a weird compulsion, and she seduces Branson into having sex with her, which devastates Mina. Mina and Vanessa are no longer friends. Following this, Vanessa has a major breakdown, and she is put into a mental asylum. In this asylum, a few things happened. I will get to that at the end, because the way that it's revealed in the show was very much preferable for me, and it wasn't revealed until the end, so I'm not going to reveal that part until the end. Anyways, Vanessa was in this asylum. She had basically given up. She had undergone hydrotherapy, electroshock therapy, and even pretty much a lobotomy. So after almost giving up, Vanessa is finally shaken out of it by, unfortunately, the death of her mother, Claire Ives. When Vanessa gets out, she has a vision that Mina is in trouble, that she has been kidnapped by some sort of dark force. And Vanessa goes to Malcolm about this, and this is what leads them into bringing Ethan into it. What was going on with Vanessa from this time is that, of course, she was possessed by Amunet, but also Lucifer was after her. He is actively seeking her soul. But Amunet is also known as the Mother of Evil. She is the actual evil one, and they're just trying to measure up to her evilness. But in order for Amunet to come out, Vanessa would have to go away. And we don't want that to happen. Nobody wants that to happen. So eventually they discovered that Mina is being held by a cult of vampires. And this is not Dracula as we know it. This is just a random master vampire created by the real Dracula. We will eventually get to Dracula. In the time after Vanessa was released and before she went to Malcolm, she went to a lady known to be a witch in the moors, who is named Joan Clayton, this woman over here, played by Patti LuPone, don't you know? Joan Clayton is a witch, also known as the Cut Wife, because she performs abortions on young girls. That's what she's there for. Young girls come to her for that, and she is thought to be evil for this reason, when in actuality she is what is known as a daywalker, which is a witch that is on the side of light. Joan teaches Vanessa everything that she needs to know, telling her that she is basically a natural witch. She calls her Little Scorpion because she has a lot of scorpion-like attributes in her personality. Joan is good, but her sister Evelyn Poole is evil. Evelyn Poole, aka Madame Kali from episode 2, is a servant of Lucifer, the devil. She is completely devoted to him. She is a dark form of witch, which is known as a nightcomer. And she has other nightcomers following her. These are them. That's her in the middle. And then these are the other two. And the third one is Evelyn's own daughter, Hecate. In the first season, Lucifer is unable to claim Vanessa's soul because Ethan is able to perform a Latin exorcism on her. So in season 2, Evelyn and Hecate and the Nightcomers are after Vanessa. Back when Vanessa was with Joan, they murdered Joan right in front of her. Vanessa also had plenty of issues with this man, Jeffrey Hawks, who was completely against Joan and everything that she was doing, and all of the witches, basically. This evil little man, but don't worry, he'll get what's coming to him. But it's not a good thing for this story, unfortunately. Also, the Nightcomers, when they're in their other form, they look like this. Which, yikes, scary. Because these claw marks that they have, that is the devil raking his claws against their bodies in order to claim them. Isn't that fun? They are also aware of the prophecy, and they are trying to claim Vanessa for Lucifer once again. Another part of the prophecy that I haven't touched on yet is Ethan. Ethan was not just a random guy that they hired. It turned out it was a form of destiny, because Ethan is a big part of the prophecy. In the Verbis Diablo, the phrase Lupus Dei is repeated again and again, many times throughout, seemingly not making sense, but it's almost like it's sort of a warning or just a constant element throughout the whole thing. Lupus Dei, which translates to the Wolf of God, is Ethan. We find out in the season 1 finale that Ethan is in fact a werewolf, and the attacks that took place in the first episode and a couple of the other episodes were actually him. Or rather, him. The thing with Lupus Dei is he could go either way. He can be swayed to the devil, or he can be swayed towards God. He is supposed to be an agent of God, but he is also capable of being turned to the other side. This becomes a big plot point in season 3 when Hecate follows Ethan back to America and tries to corrupt him, which actually almost succeeds. As the Wolf of God, or Lupus Dei, Ethan is supposed to save Vanessa from Lucifer, Amun-Ra, and herself, / Amunet. And then we have the hidden ones will emerge part of the prophecy. While most things online and in the show itself, it implies that they are talking about vampires, I think it is more likely talking about the immortals specifically, not just the vampires, but also Dorian Gray, who is immortal because he doesn't age. His picture does. He doesn't get hurt. And also the creations of Victor Frankenstein, who are immortal, who are unable to die as far as we are told. I believe they are also the hidden ones, and we will get into the specifics of this one when we get into her story. It is not explicitly related to the prophecy itself. But going back to the prophecy, at the end of season 2, Vanessa is able to use the Verbis Diablo against Evelyn Poole and is able to finally defeat Lucifer also through a weird puppet of herself. This is also when Ethan is active as Lupus Dei, and he finishes the job in killing Evelyn Poole. Unfortunately, he also kills Sembene, who was not given a large enough role in the show at all, and that fact is a little yikes. I feel like they could have done so much more with his character. We didn't even get his backstory. We don't even know what the deal was with him and Malcolm and who owed who what life debt or anything. So unfortunately, R.I.P. Sunbenet, we loved you. Even though characters from the story did feature in Penny Dreadful earlier, Season 3 is when we are introduced to Amun-Ra himself, who is calling himself Alexander Sweet, and he works at the zoo. This is not Alexander Sweet. We learn that this man, Amun-Ra, is actually Dracula, because remember, he was cursed to walk the earth forever. And of course, that leads to being Dracula. He can look like this, he can look like this, he can pretty much look like whatever he wants, which is why it's so easy for him to get in and charm Vanessa under the alias Alexander Sweet, and then basically saying, surprise, I'm actually Dracula. Also in Season 3, we get the psychologist, or alienist, as they called it at the time, Florence Seward, Dr. Florence Seward, who is based off of Dr. Seward from the original Dracula novel. We are also introduced to a smaller character in the show, but that is Renfield, one of the most iconic characters from Dracula. And I think they did a great job casting him. He's pretty good in this show also, especially in the finale. In Season 3, everybody else is spread out into different places, and Vanessa is on her own. She's been meeting with this man, Alexander Sweet. She's been telling her whole story to Dr. Seward, who, strangely, because she's played by Patti LuPone also, looks just like Joan Clayton, and Vanessa is convinced that she somehow is a reincarnation of Joan, even though Joan was still alive when Florence would have been born. But some sort of weird soul thing. I actually have a small theory. It's a big point in the story that Joan was marked by Evelyn in the name of the devil, and I think that whenever that happened, because they established that they are very, very old, I think that whenever that happened, whenever she was marked by the devil, a part of her soul went out and inhabited the body that Dr. Seward was born into. It doesn't explain it, so I'm just gonna go with that in my brain. That's what happened to me. Anyways, Alexander Sweet is able to get to Vanessa, and finally, at the end of the series, the prophecy is fulfilled, and Vanessa / Amunet is claimed by Dracula, and unfortunately, Ethan, the Wolf of God, fulfilling the role that he was supposed to, which is to save Vanessa, is forced to kill her. And I don't think that's a bad ending, especially since I think it was the 3rd episode, there's a play, which we will go into that in a moment. In the 3rd episode, there is a play in which there is a line saying, there cannot be a happy end, for claw will slash and tooth will rend. And this is repeated multiple times after that episode. So basically, they told us from the very beginning that it wasn't going to have a quote-unquote happy ending. Although some characters do have kind of happy-ish endings. I mean, I guess not. It is a very sad ending. But that doesn't mean it's not a good ending. I still thought it was a very good ending. Even though they don't even defeat Dracula, I don't think. Dracula gets away. Alright, so now that we have the whole prophecy, most of it anyways, except for the role of the last hidden one, I'm going to be getting into the stories that were not part of the prophecy. Before we move on to the other stories, I want to go over the influences and connections to other adaptations within the main mystery story. As I mentioned earlier, Sir Malcolm Murray is very much like the character Alan Quatermain, who was also featured in the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen comic and the movie. He is based on Alan Quatermain so much, in fact, that both of them were played by James Bond actors. Sean Connery played Alan Quatermain in the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen film, and Timothy Dalton, who also played James Bond, plays Sir Malcolm Murray in this show. I believe his name Malcolm came from the novel The Jewel of Seven Stars, also by Bram Stoker, who wrote Dracula, which we'll get to in a second. That book, I haven't read it, but from what I understand is from the perspective of someone named Malcolm, It's about an archaeologist who wants to awaken an ancient Egyptian queen named Tara. In the film adaptation by independent film company Hammer, called here Blood from the Mummy's Tomb, the character of Margaret is the reincarnation of Queen Tara, just like Vanessa Ives is the reincarnation of Amunet. But of course, this was influenced by more than one mummy film, considering it is a reoccurring thing to have the reincarnated love interest. This is also a recurring thing in Dracula stories now. It didn't used to be, but it became that way with the show Dark Shadows, which used the reincarnated love trope as a big part of the story, the first time it had been connected to vampires. This was carried over into the 1974 Dracula TV film, which was also made by the same guy who made Dark Shadows. Most famously, this reincarnated love story was carried over into the 1992 film Bram Stoker's Dracula by Francis Ford Coppola. The new Dracula film, Dracula: A Love Tale, also uses the reincarnated love trope. Obviously, this story is very heavily impacted by Dracula. I mean, it starts off with the disappearance of Mina Murray, who is basically the main character of the novel Dracula in most adaptations. This would make Vanessa the Lucy type character. This is evidenced in the fact that she has 3 very different possible suitors throughout the show. One of them being Ethan Chandler, who 100% was based off of Quincy Morris from the original Dracula novel and the 1992 movie. He looks just like 1992 Quincy Morris. And he also sounds just like him. The second possible suitor for Vanessa was Dorian Gray, who would be the Arthur Holmwood type character, which was the aristocratic type of person, except Arthur Holmwood was a good person and Dorian Gray is very much not a good person, which is the whole point of him. And the third possible lover for Vanessa Ives, besides Lucifer and Amun-Ra, I cannot reveal to you yet. We'll get to that. It's part of one of the other stories. But interestingly, after the first season, Vanessa transitions from the Lucy character more into the Mina character, because Mina was killed at the end of season 1 because she had been turned into a vampire, like Lucy was in the original. Her father, Malcolm Murray, had to kill her. But in season 3, Dracula is after Vanessa and wants her to become his bride, just like Dracula does with Mina in most adaptations, especially the 1992 version, because of the reincarnated love story plotline. Like I mentioned before, Ethan is very obviously based on Quincy Morris from the 1992 film specifically, I would say. If you watch this, make sure you also watch the 1992 film. You'll see exactly what I mean. It's like they're the same person, but with a different name, except Ethan is expanded on a lot more. Quincy is usually left out of every adaptation. He's only in 2 of them, I think. But Ethan is basically Quincy and also the Wolfman, as I mentioned before. Not just the Wolfman, but Wolf of God, Lupus Dei, or Hound of God. Hound of God comes from a 17th century Baltic legend about werewolves who claimed that instead of being evil creatures, they were sent by God to defeat evil creatures on Earth, which was, of course, used for Ethan. Except Ethan could go either way, so it's like half using that and half sticking with the quote-unquote evil sort of thing. He was also heavily inspired by the classic Wolfman Universal film, especially with the makeup that they choose to use. It looks kind of silly, but it's the classic look, what can I say? Joan Clayton is basically just based on legends of her type of women that would live out in the moors by themselves. People would naturally just be afraid of them. But The Nightcomers, made by Evelyn Poole, who her name might be a reference to Mrs. Poole of Jane Eyre, or maybe Mr. Poole of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. But The Nightcomers were undoubtedly a reference to the witches in Macbeth, evidenced by their leader's name being Hecate. And their more monstrous form reminds me very much of the vampire brides from Van Helsing, the movie Van Helsing. And the whole satanic possession and exorcism angle was not a common thing in stories at the time, so that was a more modern sort of thing that they put into this, which I think was an amazing choice. So they put together the Egyptian mythology and Dracula and Alan Quatermain and the witches from Macbeth and the Wolfman and Dorian Gray, of course, even though he's not part of this whole mystery. And then the vampires look like this at first. It's like the Nosferatu style, and then we get the sexy Dracula vampire style later. There's just so many references in all of this that I could make so many little things that are taken from other things. But I'll wait until I reveal the rest of the story before we get to those ones. Let's expand on Ethan's story first. At the end of season 1, we discovered that Ethan is a werewolf. And in season 2, we discovered that he is the Wolf of God. Basically, he was responsible for these attacks where he killed and hurt a bunch of people in his wolf form. So, someone from America came to investigate him. This is Roper. Roper is actually played by Stephen Lord, a guy who is actually British and is in my favorite show, the UK version of Shameless. So I was very excited to see him here. But this is Roper. He has been on the hunt for Ethan from America because Ethan killed a bunch of people in America too. Not just as a soldier in the Apache Wars, but also in his wolf form in America. We don't know if Ethan knew exactly what he was before this. It seems like he kind of knew, but also wasn't completely sure what he was, so he just kept it to himself until they found out what it was. Ethan fell in love with Brona Croft very quickly. However, Brona was dying of consumption, so after they watched the play that I mentioned earlier, she basically breaks up with him, telling him that she doesn't want to be with him anymore. And Ethan goes out and has a fun night with Dorian, and when they come back, it's implied that they sleep together. They are very intoxicated, but Dorian's saying all of these things about how Ethan should just let himself go, basically, and it's implied that they have sex, which is mentioned later when Vanessa is possessed, also after having sex with Dorian. And before Ethan had sex with Dorian, Brona had sex with Dorian for money, but everybody, that's why I didn't do the line thing. If I did the connection line thing, it would get so confusing and so messy because so many people have slept with each other. Like she fucked him, he fucked him, he fucked him, he fucked her. Yeah, it's just a big mess. That's why I didn't do the line thing. Ethan and Brona basically get back together, but her health is declining very rapidly. So Ethan asks for Victor's help in helping her pass gently. And that brings us to Victor's side of the story, because Brona's story lies right between Ethan and Victor. She begins with Ethan, goes to Victor, and then goes to Dorian. So all of this part down here, this part is all connected as well. At the end of episode 2, we are surprised when Victor's creation Proteus is killed by this man, Victor's first creation. He is never explicitly given a name in the show. This is Frankenstein's monster. He is very much based off his appearance in the book, except he is not made of multiple men's body parts. He is just one man who was revived into this. But he has yellow eyes, black lips, and the long black hair that is described in the original Frankenstein book. Victor's mother, Caroline, died when he was very young. But before she died, she told him that death is just a transformation. This gave Victor the idea that he could possibly blur the barrier between life and death and bring the dead back to the living. He achieved this with his first creation because the creature wouldn't stop screaming. Victor became afraid and ran, leaving the creature all by himself. The creature stayed in this place, which was like a cottage beside this farm, and there he learned language from the men outside. He learned how to read from Victor's books of poetry that he kept in his house, and he also learned how these people could be cruel to the animals in their farm. He saw himself as an animal and knew that he would never be accepted as a person. He found Victor, and he wants Victor to make him an immortal bride, just like himself. Obviously, Victor is horrified at this idea, but the creature tells Victor that he will kill people that he loves until he does what he asks. Victor doesn't believe this at first, not until he brings this guy, Professor Van Helsing, yes, of Dracula, and right after Van Helsing tells Frankenstein that what they're dealing with are vampires, he doesn't get a chance to do anything else because the creature comes and just kills him, just like he said he would, because Van Helsing in this version was the mentor of Frankenstein. So the creature killed Van Helsing, which on first watch I did not expect that to happen. You would think that Van Helsing would play a major role in a show like this, but no, it completely subverts that and gets him out of the way right away, while also establishing the threat level of the creature. When Brona is very sick, Victor comes to see her to care for her, and he tells Ethan to go get Brona some water. Ethan walks away, and Victor smothers Brona with a pillow to send her off gently, as he says to Ethan later. He doesn't tell Ethan what he did, but he does say that she passed gently. He also says he'll get rid of the body, so we know what Victor's gonna do. Yes, Victor is going to make Brona Croft into the bride for his creature. When he first came to London, the creature was attacked by a group of men, learning just how cruel people could be to people who did not look like them. Fortunately, he was found by this man, Vincent. Vincent is the proprietor, owner, and sometimes actor of the Grand Guignol Theatre. The Grand Guignol Theatre was an actual theatre in real life, although it was in Paris, not London, but here it is in London. The Grand Guignol was known for grotesque and bloody shows, as well as comedic shows. The shows that we get to see for the Grand Guignol in this show, it's mainly just the one, and it's about a werewolf transformation. It is both shockingly bloody and humorous at the same time, but that's where the line comes in earlier that I spoke of. There cannot be a happy end, for claw will slash and tooth will rend. The creature becomes romantically interested in one of the actresses at the Grand Guignol, Maud Gunnison, when she is nice to him. However, she is with a man named Simon, a fellow actor named Simon, who is always very cruel to the creature, just like everyone else has been to him up to this point. Vincent chooses a name for the creature since he doesn't have one. That name, ironically, is Caliban, who is from a different Shakespeare play than Proteus was, both of them named after Shakespeare plays. But Caliban is actually fitting because in The Tempest, he is a sort of ugly man who wanted a bride and killed his master over it. And although he doesn't kill Frankenstein in this, it's the same kind of narrative a little bit. Caliban has a great time working at the Grand Guignol until he misunderstands the actions of Maud and forcibly kisses her. He is pushed off, and then he is fired by Vincent, even though Vincent says that he would rather let Maud go. However, Maud is the star of the show, and Caliban only works behind the scenes, so he must let Caliban go instead of Maud. And back to the bride storyline, the last time we checked, Brona had passed away due to Victor Frankenstein holding a pillow over her face, and he wants to turn her into the bride. He is able to bring her back to life and changes her appearance, so A, she will not be recognized by anyone out in the world, and B, he wants her to look as he wants her to look, which becomes a very big plot point that will carry over to the end of the show. When Brona is revived, Victor tells her that she is actually his cousin Lily, who was in an accident, and that's why she doesn't have a memory. And now she looks like this. So because Brona is dead and has been replaced by Lily, named after the flower of resurrection, I'm going to replace Brona on the board with Lily. However, instead of giving Caliban Lily straight from the beginning, Victor starts to develop feelings for her. He is also somewhat controlling in the way that he deals with her. He tells her what she can wear, buying dresses with Vanessa in a scene that is very fun. He tells Lily what she can wear, what is expected of women in this time, to wear corsets and high shoes. And because Lily cares for him, because she doesn't know anybody else, she puts up with this and does everything that he asks of her. And because Lily isn't who Victor says she is, she has no feelings for Caliban. Victor and Caliban try to convince her that Lily was already in love with him, but she doesn't feel it at all, and she just wants to remain friends, which is very sad for Caliban, but they're trying to force something that was never there and that never should have been there. So basically, Victor loses his virginity to Lily, and they become a thing, and Vanessa is very happy for them. And then they go to a party of Dorians together. Dorian, because he had sex with Brona earlier, recognizes Lily and starts to charm her or seduce her like he did with Vanessa in season 1. It is most likely due to her exposure to Dorian that helps Lily unlock her memories as Brona. Not only does she unlock her memories as Brona, but she also becomes aware of things that happened earlier before her persona as Lily was established, such as Victor touching her naked body soon after she was revived. This culminates in an incredible scene where Caliban attempts to force himself on Lily, and she fights back, showing that she is just as strong as him and revealing to him that she remembers exactly who she was. She gives an incredible monologue about the sadness of her old life and the power of her new life, briefly switching from Lily to Brona, from her new, more refined English accent to her Irish accent, and then back again. This is my favorite scene in the entire show, and Billie Piper, who portrays Brona and Lily, should have won an award for this. Now that Lily knows exactly what and who she is, she abandons Frankenstein, finding him to be weak. And also, I haven't mentioned this yet, but Victor Frankenstein is heavily addicted to morphine throughout the show. In this time, morphine was used as medication. Victor was shown to be a sickly child. It is likely that he was given morphine as a child and became addicted to it then, and carried this addiction into adulthood. It's very interesting to me that such an intellectual man as Dr. Frankenstein wouldn't recognize that Lily would regain her memories, when Proteus, in his short second life, was already starting to get his memories back of being a sailor and his wife. But Victor was surprised when Lily revealed that she remembered her life as Brona. Victor definitely should have remembered that Proteus was able to regain his memories very quickly and made precautions for this with Brona Lily, but he just didn't. And that cost him a lot, because in season 3, Lily and Dorian are fully together and just wreaking complete havoc. Due to her past as a prostitute, Lily is now very much against the type of men who would abuse and use prostitutes. In season 3, she starts recruiting all of these young prostitutes and trains them how to kill the men that they hook up with by slitting their throats. The first and most prominent of these girls is Justine. Justine plays a major role in season 3, basically entering into a sort of threesome with Dorian and Lily, although she cares very much more for Lily than she does for Dorian. She wants Dorian to be dead, just like every other man. She is very much against men. In other words, Justine said, why would a man be there? Switching back to the storyline of the creature, in season 2, since he has been released from his job at the Grand Guignol, the creature finds a new job at a wax museum. The wax museum is run by a small family. We have Mr. Putney, Mrs. Putney, and their blind daughter, Lavinia Putney. At first, it seems like the Putney family is very kind, except for the mom, Mrs. Putney. She's kind of rude to Caliban straight from the beginning. And the dad is obsessed with expanding their wax museum into including more attractions. The daughter is the only one that is kind to the creature. If you know the original Frankenstein story and many of the adaptations, you know that there is a blind character that he becomes close with. And in this version, that is Lavinia Putney. Even though she's blind, she does most of the wax figures at the museum. Unfortunately, it turns out that the Putneys are not good or kind people. In fact, Mr. Putney is setting up a sort of zoo for freaks, and he only gave the creature a job in order to lure him in and make him the first of those freaks. Sadly, even Lavinia is in on this. She lures the creature to a cage and closes him in, and they all make fun of him. But unfortunately for the Putney family, they underestimate the strength of the creature, and he is able to get out of his cage. He kills Mr. and Mrs. Putney and leaves Lavinia alone to find their bodies, walking away as she screams. By now, the creature is not using the name Caliban given to him by Vincent from the Grand Guignol. Instead, he is using the name of poet John Clare. He briefly met Vanessa in season 1 and again met her in season 2, and they seem to have a sort of good relationship. Even though they barely know each other, they have deep conversations, and when they do meet, they really help each other feel better. Going back to Dorian briefly, in season 2, Dorian met and quickly fell in love with Angelique. This is Angelique. Angelique is a trans character. Obviously, it would be difficult to be trans in that time, in 1891, and that's what a lot of Angelique's story is about. Dorian Gray being Dorian Gray, he does not care about the stigma surrounding Angelique. He likes her, he thinks she's beautiful, and he wants to be with her. This is until Angelique discovers the infamous painting of Dorian Gray. She discovers it, he starts to explain what it is exactly, and asks if she can accept him. She says yes, but unfortunately, our good old bad boy Dorian spikes her drink with poison and kills Angelique. This is when we finally get to see the painting, all the way in season 2. Back to Ethan's story. In season 2, when Vanessa was being hunted by the Nightcomers, Ethan took her to Ballantrae Moor, the house of Joan Clayton, for protection. At Ballantrae Moor is where Vanessa Ives kills Geoffrey Hawks, this man who was responsible for the death of Joan Clayton. She does this through the Verbus Diablo, which basically damns her soul and lets it be claimed, almost. Of course, we know that Lucifer was defeated at the end of that season, but before that happened, Vanessa and Ethan nearly hooked up at Ballantrae Moor, but they know that it's not right and they cannot do this. This is because if they did have sex, Vanessa would again be possessed by Amunet, and the Wolf of God, Lupus Dei, would be corrupted by her into being evil, so he couldn't save her at the end. At Ballantrae Moor, Vanessa also kills Roper, the man who was after Ethan. He actually witnessed Ethan turn into the Wolf of God, and he was mauled by him. I don't have a picture of it, but half of his face was completely destroyed by the Wolf of God. and he's been seeking Ethan ever since, but they kill him at Ballantrae Moor. Instead, Ethan is pursued by Inspector Rusk of Scotland Yard, who is investigating all of these dangerous crimes and attacks. Ethan turns himself in, but Rusk receives a letter that Ethan is to return to America to be tried for his crimes there. Ethan goes to America. He is pursued by Hecate, who is trying to turn the Wolf of God to the side of evil, and the train that they are traveling on is suddenly ambushed, and eventually Ethan is reunited with his dad, Jared Talbot, who is played by the amazing Brian Cox, who I know best as William Stryker in X-Men 2, and also the father of Samara in The Ring. It's revealed that although Ethan was a soldier, eventually he felt bad for everything that he did, all of the Native Americans he killed, and he went to the Apache to basically let them kill him. Instead, they made him one of their own. And one man in particular, Kaetenay, basically adopted him as his own son. In Season 3, Malcolm and Kaetenay are on the trail of Ethan in America. They eventually all meet up at the estate of Jared Talbot, where they have a nice little dinner together, where Jared blames the death of his better son on Ethan. He tells Ethan to say grace during dinner, and Ethan basically says an alternative of the Lord's Prayer, which is like Satan's prayer. Every line of the Lord's Prayer is turned negative instead of positive. It's inverted. He is literally about to give himself to Lucifer instead of God. And this is all under the corruption of Hecate, of course. However, Malcolm shoots Jared in the head, preventing Ethan from killing his own father. Kaetenay, who has visions, knows that Vanessa is in trouble, so everyone leaves to go save her. And that's where we get back to the final episode. While I already discussed some of the finale, I'm going to go into Dorian and Lily's part now. Dorian and Lily have been leading a bunch of prostitutes into killing men that would abuse them. But Dorian has grown tired of this. He's sick of all these girls being in his home, and he basically wants them to leave. During Season 3, Victor has been dealing with his addiction with his great friend, Dr. Henry Jekyll. That's right, Dr. Jekyll finally appears in the world of Penny Dreadful. Victor has been working closely with Dr. Jekyll in order to erase the erratic behavior of some mental patients, and this process actually works. Victor helps Henry expand on the process using his knowledge of electrical science. Victor gets it in his head that he can use this process with Dr. Jekyll in order to save Lily, to get her to stop being evil. He brings Lily to the mental hospital where Dr. Jekyll is employed, where he has his big lab. They attempt to do the process on Lily while Dorian is kicking all of the girls out of his house, but Victor is unable to do it because Lily explains a story that she lost a child and she doesn't want to forget the child that she lost. So Victor, finally showing his humanity, finally realizing that this was wrong, lets Lily go. Lily returns to Dorian, finding that he has just murdered Justine. R.I.P. Justine. Because Justine would rather die than go back onto the streets where she came from. And so, the way that this part of the story connects to the basic overall mystery is that these are the hidden ones that were spoken of in the prophecy. Although the creature wants no part in this, in Season 3 he has found his old wife and child. Although sadly, his son is dying of consumption. But these two, with their army of prostitutes, along with the vampires, and all of the other night creatures that would come out, I believe these two specifically are the hidden ones talked about in the prophecy. But fortunately, Lily remembered her daughter, remembered who she was, and basically stopped the Enterprise. Dorian stayed alive because, of course he did, because he's Dorian Gray, he's very selfish, and he'll be alive as long as he possibly can. It's just sad that he didn't have the chance to have that immortal life with Lily like he thought he was going to get, because Lily was so focused on her own vindictive vengeance that she basically no longer wanted anything to do with him, even though he was the one who had awakened her mind. And now we'll get into the end of John Clare's story. Like I said, in season 3, John Clare, aka the Creature, is reunited with his wife, Marjorie, and his son, Jack. Unfortunately, his son, Jack, is dying of consumption. Towards the end, Marjorie asks the Creature to take Jack's dead body when he dies to Victor Frankenstein and have him revived. The Creature is completely horrified at this idea due to the experiences that he has had in his own undead life, and he refuses. Marjorie tells him if he doesn't do this, then he can just leave. So, after Jack dies, the Creature leaves, taking his dead body into the river, which is a very fitting, sad place to send his son off, because a big interest of his son's was ships. Alright, let's get into the influences and references in this part of the story. Obviously, we have Frankenstein, the novel, and the Creature. We are at first led to believe that this is the Creature and that it's just a different interpretation, and Frankenstein made the Creature in London. However, he actually made the original Creature out in this cottage in the middle of nowhere, and he ran away from his Creature just like he did in the book. Like I said before, this Creature is very reminiscent of the Creature in the book. Also, Frankenstein is described as young in the book. He is also young here. The character of Brona Croft is based on a type of character at the time, where consumption was used in stories to tell that the woman had given herself to darker forces in life, or that she was sick-minded or just very different from other women. This very much tracks with Brona Croft. However, when she becomes Lily, the inspiration becomes Elizabeth from the Frankenstein novel. In the original version of the Frankenstein novel, Elizabeth was Victor's cousin who he fell in love with, and in this, Victor pretends that Lily was his cousin and falls in love with her. The Creature's tenure at the Grand Guignol is very reminiscent of Phantom of the Opera, even though they don't put on operas. They put on the grotesque comedy type of shows that I spoke of earlier. Furthermore, the creator John Logan has spoken about how he was very inspired by the Hammer horror films from the 50s to the 70s. One of these films was Frankenstein Created Woman. In this film, Dr. Frankenstein has an assistant named Hans. Hans is framed for murder and set to death. He is decapitated, and his girlfriend, Christine, who is a woman with thick red hair, cannot stand the fact that he is dead and jumps to her death, drowning in a river. Dr. Frankenstein, in Frankenstein Created Woman, is able to capture Hans' soul and put it into the body of Christine. After Christine's body is revived, Victor gives her a makeover into having short blonde hair and being very beautiful. However, Frankenstein's effort to make the perfect woman goes wrong when Hans' soul within her seeks out the men who were responsible for framing him and the men responsible for his death, turning the new creation, this woman, into a killer. Penny Dreadful takes this and alters it. Instead of being ugly, she is a prostitute, and after she becomes Lily, she gets revenge on the type of men that had wronged her as Brona, rather than the specific men responsible for her death, considering the altered circumstances of her death in this version. Interestingly, perhaps because nobody ever talks about Penny Dreadful, I haven't seen the comparison made between Penny Dreadful and Frankenstein Created Woman, but it is one of the most obvious references in the show, I think. Also, a little smaller possible detail is Proteus. Although his name is taken from the Shakespeare version of Proteus, the god Proteus was a shapeshifter as well as a prophet. This is notable to me in this story because Proteus, remembering his life, kind of foretold what was going to occur with Brona Lily later. Other references in Season 3 include Justine, who is a hybrid character of Justine from the 1791 novel, who is a prostitute in France. This is in London instead. and also the character Justine from the novel Frankenstein, who was killed by the creature. In this version, however, she is killed by Dorian Gray, who was with a creature. And then we have Dr. Jekyll. We never get to see him be Mr. Hyde. His story is a little different. He's based not only on Henry Jekyll, but also on Henry Clerval, who was the best friend of Dr. Frankenstein in the novel. Also, he has a white father, but a non-white mother. This, and also the general aggression of his character, leads me to believe that he was also partially based on Heathcliff from Wuthering Heights. Which is very ironic because this actor, Shazad Latif, is in the new Wuthering Heights movie, although not as Heathcliff. Strangely. Okay, saving the best for last, we're finally going to get into the thing that I have been teasing the entire video. This is the most important aspect of the story to me, and I will get into why at the very end of the explanation. It is revealed in the Season 3 episode, A Blade of Grass, which is the highest rated episode of the entire show, that through hypnosis from Dr. Seward, Vanessa is able to remember that when she was in the asylum, she had one orderly in particular that was very kind to her. This orderly, as we are shown, is actually the creature in the life he lived before his unfortunate death, and he looked like this. This man showed Vanessa a lot of kindness when she was in the asylum, bringing her blankets when she wasn't supposed to have one, putting makeup on her and doing her hair, doing all of these nice things for her that he wasn't supposed to do, putting his own job in jeopardy for the sake of kindness. He also warned her of the various things they would be doing on her and begged her not to let them take her mind from her. But at this point, Vanessa didn't care because she knew that it wasn't something in her mind. It was a greater force. It was the devil trying to get her. But of course, they would not listen to this. They found this to be insane, so there was nothing she could really do. Still, this man was extremely, extremely kind to her, to the point where she ended up not just kissing him, but they ended up making out at one point. They had a very great connection. Unfortunately, through this connection, Lucifer was able to get to her by possessing the man that the creature used to be. We still don't know, we are never told, what exactly happened to this man to lead to him being turned into this. But it's another one of those destiny things where, even though they had been separated by death, these two eventually came back together and met in this life. Although he still doesn't remember anything about his past. His actual name is never revealed either. But in the end, after he puts his son in the river, the creature needs comfort and seeks out Vanessa. But at that point, she is already dead. This is so tragic and impactful because I believe if things could have been different, if Amunet hadn't been inside Vanessa, if the creature hadn't died, obviously he was with his wife Marjorie at this point, but we are led to believe that through her belief that their son should be brought back to life, that she might not be the greatest person. But I believe if things could have been different, Vanessa and this man could have worked out. That's why I said before that there are 3 possible suitors for Vanessa. The Quincy Morris type, the Arthur Holmwood type, and the Dr. Seward type, because he was there for her when she was in the asylum. And that, I think, is the most tragic part of the story and ties everything together in a nice little bow, apart from the major mystery and prophecy. So when we break it all down, we have the story of a reincarnated Egyptian goddess of evil whose soul is fought over between Lucifer and a damned Egyptian god who later becomes Dracula. While the woman herself has 3 possible mates, one being the Wolf Man, one being the legendary Dorian Gray, and the last being a man who unfortunately lost his life and all of his memories. And this woman is being taken care of by the father of a vampire victim, Mina Murray. After defeating Lucifer and the piece of Amunet within herself, she is hunted by agents of the devil, the Nightcomers, who try to claim her soul for the devil before Amun-Ra can get it. They are unsuccessful, the Nightcomers are defeated, the wolf is almost swayed to the other side, but in the end, after being hunted by Dracula and receiving help from Dr. Seward, Vanessa is saved by the Wolf of God, finally releasing her from the clutches of Lucifer and Dracula. Essentially, Penny Dreadful is a story about outcasts coming together and creating a found family with each other. By the end of the show, Ethan refers to Malcolm as his father. Victor is somewhat of a brother to Ethan. Vanessa had been claimed as Malcolm's daughter in season 1. Lyle became the good friend of everyone involved. And unfortunately, those doomed with immortality end up all alone at the end. A very big part of this show is that every character has a sort of monster inside them. They are not good people. It's definitely a metaphor for the monsters that we could all possibly have inside us, except displayed way more literally. Even the main characters that aren't possessed by some sort of monster or outside force have their own demons within them. That being Malcolm Murray, who has killed many Africans and basically was responsible for the death of his son Peter. We have Sembene, who was revealed to have been a slave trader himself. And I don't know if you can see it, but the markings on his cheeks represent every slave that he traded of his own people. Which, that is very, very deep and difficult. And then we have Mr. Lyle, who is probably the best person out of all of these people, morally. He only did one bad thing, which was to give Evelyn Poole information about Mina. He only did this out of fear for the loss of his life, and the fear that Evelyn Poole might reveal his secret to everyone, aka being a homosexual and Jewish, on top of that. That's one of the reasons why this show is so good, because these characters are very, very flawed characters, but you get to love them anyways. You get to know them deeper than you get to know many characters in other things. You know their fears, you know what they love, you know what they hate, you know their beliefs. This show is plot-driven, but it is very much more character-driven. It focuses less on action most of the time, and more so on conversations between these characters that reveal who they are on the deepest levels. Unfortunately, no television show is without its flaws, and the biggest flaw in this show is very unfortunate. If you look up here, you'll notice something. You know what that thing is? A huge lack of diversity. This show is not very good at diversity, and even if the diversity is represented well, the characters do not get the best endings. As you can see up here in reference to skin color, Sembene is the one and only person of color. For later examples, we have Cadne, who is Apache, and we have Dr. Jekyll, who is half Indian, I believe. However, this is the problem. Sembene was killed in season 2 and barely even gets a mention afterwards. Dr. Jekyll is given a very small role in the show. He's not given the full treatment of everybody else. We never get to see Mr. Hyde. He just inherits his father's estate and becomes known as Lord Hyde. And that's like the kind of say that again moment at the end of the show for Dr. Jekyll. He barely gets anything, and on top of that, he is presented as very aggressive. And this might be the point of his character, It just seems a little off to have one of the only other people of color be known for being aggressive. With Caithney does not get a bad ending. He does not die. He actually lives until the very end, and assumedly stays in London as far as we can tell. However, as I stated, Caithney is an Apache character, which is a big part of the story because the Indian Wars were going on at that time, and one of the main characters, Ethan Chandler, right beside him there, fought in the Indian Wars. However, they very quickly fall into the magic Native American trope, where Caithney is actually the wolf that bit Ethan and turned him into the Wolfman Lupus Dei. And that doesn't seem bad enough on its own, but the reason Caithney did this is because he also has visions. He's capable of having visions, which is what gets the people in America to go and save Vanessa. This is very much the magical Native American trope. I understand the visions kind of had to be there to make the story work the way it did, but they could have picked something else to alert them of Vanessa being in danger. Visions and being a werewolf, I don't know about that. Even the white minority characters are not immune to this. Mr. Lyle, who is very gay even though he is married, and is also Jewish, has to move to Egypt first for a project, but he says he'll probably stay there. This one is interesting because it seems that Mr. Lyle was written out to make way for a different kind of diversity, that being Catriona Hartigan, who is, I'm so sorry, I love this show, but she is 100% a Mary Sue. She was one of the first sort of Mary Sue characters, because it was 2016. That was a big thing back then. So basically they replaced the gay Jewish character with a woman for the sake of girl boss, I guess. And then we have the other major LGBTQIA plus character, that being Angelique. Angelique was also unceremoniously killed, poisoned by Dorian Gray after she discovered his secret. And while I think Angelique was a good representation of a trans character, especially in the setting of that time, I don't really think she had to die. It just feels a little yucky, just about her and Mr. Lyle both. Being a gay person myself, that just felt a little wrong. But mostly the completely unnecessary death of Sembonay, the aggression of Dr. Jekyll, and the magic Native American trope of Caithney. So basically, that is Penny Dreadful in a nutshell. It is so interesting, so cool. The music is awesome. The cinematography is awesome. Every single shot looks so beautiful, and I would heavily recommend watching it to anyone. If you want to stop here, that's fine, but I am going to be going into one last part where I tell you what I would have done differently if there had been a fourth season. It's pretty simple, actually. Instead of the way that season 3 ended, I would have had Vanessa become the Bride of Dracula. The entire fourth season would have been the Blessed Dark, when everything in London was dark and the air wasn't breathable. This way we could have had Dorian and Lily come to power, and possibly also the creature too, while the others would be trying to stop them. Maybe it would be best in movie format. I just think the ending with the night could have been a lot longer. It could have gone on a lot longer in universe, and also I would have brought back Mr. Lyle to be part of that, because I love Mr. Lyle and he was wronged. I think there should have been something in the last season about maybe Malcolm in Africa contacting Sembonay's spirit or visiting Sembonay's family, something along those lines, so that his death meant something in the end and wasn't just a sudden, shocking moment. Also, this longer period of darkness would give us a chance to see Dr. Jekyll actually as Mr. Hyde, and it would be very interesting to see them try to stop him too. Maybe he would join up with the Hidden Ones and become one of them, become one of the people in power as Jekyll slowly disappeared more and more and Hyde became more and more prominent. Just give him something. Give him a bigger role in the story. If you're going to introduce him, do something with him. Because in the story that we got, he's basically just a mix of Henry Clerval and Dr. Seward, even though we already had a Dr. Seward. While we're on the subject of Dr. Seward, maybe in this proposed fourth season they could reveal what exactly happened with the Joan Clayton Dr. Seward thing, how she looks just like her, how she is her according to Vanessa's feelings. And the biggest missed opportunity, Brona Lily never met Ethan after she came back to life. What is that about? That would be the biggest reunion ever. In this proposed fourth season, maybe Ethan could save Lily from herself and convince her to not be an immortal dictator with Dorian. While we're on Dorian, Dorian should have died, I think. They should have done his ending where he destroys the painting, but it destroys him. That would have been another really great thing to see at the end of all this. And then maybe at the end, actually defeat Dracula. And I know Vanessa kind of had to die at the end to release her soul to God. I just wish it hadn't been so quick. I wish we would have had more time with Amunet and Amun-Ra actually being paired and ruling over this dark world with Dorian and Lily. So those are all my thoughts. If you stayed this long, I really appreciate it. I've never done this sort of thing before, like I said, so I'm very proud of this product. I'm very proud that I actually was able to do this, and I hope it was enjoyable. I hope you had a good time. I hope you learned a lot, and most of all, I hope that you check out this show for yourself. That's why I didn't go super in-depth with everything, because I want the show to be viewed the way that it should be, where everything is revealed a little bit at a time, because that's one of the best things about this show. So leave a like, share your thoughts, favorite it, subscribe if you like. It would be cool, but I'm not here for any of that. I'm just here to share my love of one of the greatest TV shows I have ever watched. Have a good day, guys. Thank you.